Chapter 7. All Will Be Well. Henry towered over a wretched creature before him. The pathetic beast looked like a beardless dwarf, with patches of donkey flesh covering its face and body. It had one human ear, and one wolf's ear, and a protruding wolf's snout with fangs. Its arms and hands were human, but its legs and feet were feline, and its tail was a donkey's. The creature cowered pitifully and whimpered like a wounded dog. A low voice, that was not Henry's, spoke calmly from Henry's throat.
"I am very disappointed in you, Otto. The gods are angry with you, but not me. I'm not angry, just disappointed. After all these years, you still can't tell the difference between a man's jaw and a woman's jaw. Many more people will suffer because of what you've done. Do you know what that means?"
There was a long pause. Without looking up, the mutant whined a muffled word.
"Pain?" "Yes, Otto. Pain."
Henry unfastened a whip from his belt and let the business end fall to the floor. Just as he was about to bring it down on the miserable creature, Henry woke up. Henry washed his tired face in a basin by the bedroom door. His eyes were sore and heavy from lack of restful sleep. The night had been long and plagued with nightmares. But he put on a good face for the others, and pushed the dreams as far back into his mind as they would go. He was not able, however, to conceal his fatigue from Rowan. When she asked him if he was all right, he did not respond, and she did not press the matter. Instead, she confessed that she too had been having nightmares, but did not elaborate further. "I'm so sorry for sneaking away last night," Rowan said. "I just wanted time to myself. It's what I'm used to." "It's all right, Whiskers," Henry said, facing her. "I understand cats are independent." Rowan cracked a smile. "Still," said Henry, "at least tell one of us where you're going next time. We do care about you, you know, even if you scared my horse into this awful place." Rowan's smile vanished, and she glared at him. "Not this again." When Irina and Navarra awoke, the four friends went to the burgomaster's. On the outside, the burgomaster's mansion bore many signs of decay, vines crawling up its stone walls and scars where the stucco had fallen away. Henry went up to the oak door and knocked. A moment later the door opened, and a servant greeted them.
"Do you have an appointment with Baron Vallakovich?" she said.
"We're new in town," Henry said, "and we were told to come here and inform the burgomaster."
"Registration, yes. The Baron would want to see you. Come in."
She led them into the house and up a carpeted staircase. When they reached the top of the stair, they walked past a bedroom with an open door. Henry glimpsed inside and saw a collection of dolls. Red-haired dolls were lined up in rows on bookshelves, and a few of them sat neatly on a bed, staring with smiling expressions.
"Not in there, sir."
The servant hastily shut the door.
"That's the sheriff's room. This way, please."
Henry and the others followed the servant to a study, walled with bookshelves. They sat down on chairs, upholstered with rich velvet, and waited for an uncomfortably long time, reading the spines of books with such titles as Arganvale, Home of the Dusk Elves, Goats of the Balanock Mountains, and Stepping Beyond the Plain. Teacups clattered in the room below them, accompanied by outbursts of shrill laughter and obnoxious snorting. Henry was about to take one of the books off the shelf when the study doors burst open and two mastiffs bounded in, growling suspiciously. Nevertheless, they smeared their sloppy wet muzzles across the newcomers' laps, leaving behind a trail of thick slobber.
"Claudius Maximus, come here, boys."
A man with stringy grey locks combed over a receding hairline entered the room. He patted his leg, and the dogs trotted over to him, wagging their tails. His robe was of scarlet wool, trimmed with ermine.
"Well, strangers?"
He squinted his eyes at them, patting the rolling folds on the mastiffs' necks.
"Welcome to Vallaki, where all will be well. My maid says you're here to register."
"We are," Henry said.
"Good, good. I take it there are no witches among you?"
His jaw thrust out as he spoke, giving his deep voice a nasally slur.
What exactly do you mean by witches?"
Navarra asked. Henry and Rowan shot her a look of reproach.
"Druids, dear girl, those evil devil-worshipping druids from the hills. I know you've been checked at the gate, but I like to ask these questions all the same."
"No witches here,"
Navarra said, shaking her head from side to side.
"And we don't like Count Strahd either. You see, we're here helping a friend move into town."
The burgomaster walked over to a desk and dropped a large register on it with a thump.
"As long as this friend is a happy one,"
he said, adjusting a pair of reading glasses on the end of his nose.
"She's right here,"
said Navarra, indicating Irina.
"I am thrilled,"
Irina said, putting on a grin.
"Good, good. Come sign, all of you."
He held out a quill and opened the large book.
"You must all stay for the festival in a few days. We need all the happiness we can get. I hope you're all very happy."
He scrutinized each one as they wrote down their names in the register.
"Oh yes, we're full of gusto and glee,"
Navarra said.
"That's the spirit."
"Burgomaster,"
Navarra said,
"I would like to offer my services as a guard for the town. I've had experience as a deputy before."
He took off his spectacles and looked at her.
"Well, we do need manpower."
Rowan leaned into the warlock.
"Navarra, are you sure you want to take a job? Here?" "I'm running low on funds," Navarra said. "I need to earn pocket coins somehow. It will help all of us."
Then she turned to the burgomaster.
"What do you say, Mr. Burgomaster Baron Vallakovich?"
Navarra rocked back and forth on her toes, beaming.
"Well, with an attitude like that, I think you'd make a fine deputy," he said. "I want you to meet Sheriff Strasny here tomorrow at dawn for your first day on duty. We need some extra patrols about town. Everyone must be told to come to the festival, and everyone must be happy about it."
"Why do people need to be so happy?"
Rowan asked.
"My dear girl,"
said the Baron, tossing his spectacles on the table,
"this is our chance for salvation, when every humble citizen is filled with joy in their heart. Our town will be saved from the dismal land of Barovia, and all will be well."
"How will it be saved?" Henry asked.
"The Shadowfell is a land of sadness," said the burgomaster. "The way you fight sadness is with happiness. Once everyone in Vallaki is truly happy, we won't be in the Shadowfell any more. We will rise up out of the darkness, out of the clutches of the vampire devil."
"You mean the people will rise up against the vampire, or that the town will magically rise into the air?"
Irina hesitated to say the last words.
"Out of the Shadowfell, silly girl! We will rise! Rise!"
The Baron lifted his arms, and the two dogs sitting beside him howled in unison. When they left for St. Andral's Church, Henry hoped to the heavens that Father Lucian would be both alive and sane. He looked back at the Baron's mansion and noticed peculiar purple lights flashing from the attic window.
"Did you see that?" Rowan asked.
"Yeah," Henry said. "Strange." Then he turned to the warlock. "Navarra, you just signed up to work for a madman. You know that, right?"
"At least he knows that Vallaki is in the Shadowfell."
Navarra crossed her arms.
"Besides, it will give me the chance to investigate this town's monkey business from the inside."
St. Andral's Church sat on a small hill off the road on the west side of town. Its steeple reached toward Mount Celestia, like a worshipper lifting a weary hand in supplication. Stained-glass saints looked down with tired eyes from dim windows.
"Peace be with you,"
said a man at the entrance, wearing a simple cowled habit. "Father Lucian?" Henry asked.
"That's me,"
said the priest. His ice-blue eyes, almost as light as an albino's, welcomed them into the church.
"And you must be the newcomers. Mrs. Martikov mentioned you yesterday, when she came by with the 3 children." "Freak, Myrtle, Lucian!"
Irina knelt and hugged the orphans as they ran up to her. One of them poked Navarra's pack, probably looking for the pseudo-dragon.
"They've been very good,"
Father Lucian said.
"except that one of them stole my name."
He smiled and ruffled the little Lucian's hair.
"As you can see, they're not the only children who need care."
About 20 forlorn faces sat among the pews and corners of the sanctuary, many of them children. A nursing mother's baby started crying. "Are they all homeless?" Henry asked.
"Some, but many just come here to get away from the all too watchful eyes of the sheriff. He's always on the prowl, harassing the poor, claiming their spirits are too low. Criminal unhappiness, he calls it."
Then the priest looked at Irina.
"Irina Kolyana?"
His voice was gentle, but Henry saw Irina draw back.
"You know me?"
she asked, hesitant.
"I know your father, Kolyan Indirovich. I haven't seen you since you were a little girl. How is your father? I still remember your family coming here to the church years ago."
Irina's eyes welled up with tears.
"Oh, my dear, forgive me for upsetting you."
"Her father passed away recently," Henry explained.
"I'm deeply sorry for your loss,"
the priest said, handing her a kerchief and asking her to sit down on one of the pews. "Irina has come to Vallaki to stay for a while," Henry said. "Father Lucian, is this church safe?"
"It's consecrated, if that's what you mean. That's another reason many people come to St. Andral's. No vampires can get in. But tell me, Irina, how is the church in Barovia? How is Father Donovich?"
Irina gazed up at the saints in the stained glass.
"Father Donovich is dead," she said. "Strahd killed him too."
Father Lucian sat down on a pew beside her.
"Morning, Lord, help us."
"Father,"
said a scrawny boy coming up to them,
"I have those candles you asked for."
"Thank you, Yeska,"
the father said, taking the bundle of wax. The boy stared at the strangers while they talked, until Father Lucian sent him off on another errand.
"All I can do is pray that this church will continue to be God's light in the darkness."
"What can you tell us about the burgomaster?"
Navarra asked the father.
"I'm going to be working for him, and I was wondering about his strange theories. Will happiness bring Vallaki out of the Shadowfell?"
"Baron Vallakovich,"
Father Lucian exhaled with guarded frustration,
"is a rather self-important man, with no real compassion or concern for the people. He thinks that by reading old books he can find a way to be rid of Count Strahd. This Shadowfell talk is likely something he made up.
But regardless, he fixed his gaze on the crying baby. The Baron is hurting people in this town more than helping them, and Vallaki needs more than I can offer, like a school and an orphanage, not all these mandatory festivals. Those are the Baron's pet projects, and they've been more frequent every month. People are fed up. Each festival held is a work day taken away from their livelihoods. That's a shame, Henry said after a moment's silence. It is. Father Lucian looked down at the candles in his hands. The town will need a new burgomaster if the Baron's madness grows any worse. Lady Wachter, a prominent noblewoman, is a vocal critic of his policies, and some say that her family has a better claim to the baronial title. But she hasn't dared to advance that claim. Regardless, someone needs to, or Baron Vallakovich will run Vallaki into the ground rather than raise it up, as he says. Sensing that the priest was an honest and God-fearing man, they spent a good part of the day talking with him about Vallaki, Barovia, and Irina's plight. "I'm so sorry for all you've been through, Irina," the father said. "I think those who suffer most are the ones hunted by the Count himself. Feel free to stay at the church as long as you like." Before they left St. Andral's, Henry stood in the center of the sanctuary and cast his divine sense. He felt no presence of undead or fiends, but neither did he feel the tranquility of consecrated ground. "Father," Henry said, as he and the others walked out the door, "I want to let you know that your church is not consecrated." "What?" "I have divine magic. I can detect not only hellish or unholy beings, but also whether a space is consecrated or desecrated. I feel nothing in this church, good or bad. It's not consecrated, Father." The priest's brow knitted, and he frowned. "That's very concerning indeed. I'll have to look into it. I'll let you know what I discover. And since you're gifted with magic from God, if I need your help, would you be willing?" He looked up at Henry, hopeful. Henry nodded. "I'll be here if you need me." "There's one other thing." Father Lucian pulled Henry aside. "I'm not sure how to say this. I'll leave it up to you when to tell Irina. 14 years ago she was found wandering around the Svalich wood alone. She was brought here to the church for about a month before she was adopted by Burgomaster Indirovich. She's not his natural daughter. No one knew where she came from or who her real family was, and it appears that Irina doesn't know either." Henry placed a hand on his chin. "I'll tell her. She has a right to know." When Henry caught up with the others, he found Irina trying to befriend Herkomoid by having him fetch a stick. The pseudo-dragon huffed, indignant. Navarra explained that he didn't like being treated with such low regard, and would never act like a cat or a dog. "Who says cats are low?" asked Rowan. Then she transformed into a fluffy feline. Herkomoid's ears pricked up, and the two of them chased each other all the way back to the Blue Water Inn.
"What do you think it means that the church isn't consecrated? Was it ever?" asked Irina in their room at the inn. "I'm not sure," Henry said, taking off his armor and putting on the only surcoat he had brought with him. "Whatever was keeping that church protected isn't there any more." Rowan purred. She was snuggled up on her bed in cat form. "Oh, that's right,"
Navarra said, coming into the room. She had changed into an evening gown.
"Henry, I need to ask you about consecrating." "Where did you get this dress?"
Irina asked, running folds of blue fabric through her fingers.
"Harrington,"
Navarra said, giving it a twirl.
"It was easy to roll up in my pack, so I thought, why not bring it? But anyway, I meant to tell you all that Gostomir wants us to consecrate the Fanes."
"The what?" Henry and Irina asked at once. Navarra explained the standing stones as much as she could remember, urging her friends that their duty must be to find and consecrate them all. It was a matter of life or death.
Anyway, we can talk more about that later.
She changed her doomsday tone for one of merriment.
Right now, I need to go downstairs. Vasily is probably already there waiting for me.
Then she glided out of the room with a sly smile. Henry raised his eyebrows. Fanes, huh?
Well, said Irina, I don't think we'll die if we don't consecrate them right now. But if it is true, I would want you to do it soon, Henry. Anything against Strahd, I'm all for.
Music began playing in the tavern below, and Irina curtsied for Henry and held out her hand.
Sir Henry, would you care to go downstairs for a dance?
I think I would, Lady Irina.
Sophie.
She poked him. Rowan gave a yawn and stretched her legs. You should go down too, Whiskers, Henry said to the cat. Rowan merely yawned again. Henry shook his head. Have it your way.
Wow, Vasily said. You look gorgeous. Here, have a seat.
He pulled out a chair for Navarra. Navarra smiled with delight and sat down. Hot food and wine were already set.
Vasily von Holtz, she said,
taking the wine and swirling it in her glass. She could tell by his fine clothes and deportment that he was a gentleman.
You're not just a writer, are you? You're a lord.
I'm a lesser lord, Vasily said, sipping his wine. The von Holtz are a noble family, going back hundreds of years. My family estate is out in the country, Crowgarrett Manor. I left my butler Cyrus in charge of it while I'm gone.
I'd love to see it sometime,
Navarra said, intrigued.
Oh, you will. I can't wait to show it to you. Do you have family there?
No, they've all passed on. It's just me now.
I hope you don't get too lonely.
Navarra felt a pang of sympathy. Sometimes, but that's why I like coming to town.
My family lives in the Eladrin Wood, many hundreds of miles away.
She took a few bites of warm buttered bread.
You must have been well educated coming from a noble family.
Not as much as I would have liked, he said, eating the parsnips on his plate.
Me neither, but I've learned to fight pretty well. I'm not as good with a sword, but I'm wicked with a spear. Mostly, though, I just use magic. How about you?
Vasily put up his hands. Me? Oh, no. I'm not good at those kinds of things. Navarra was slightly disappointed, but tried not to show it. The gloomy minstrel in the corner of the room strummed his lute in the background, the mournful chords incongruous with the pleasant atmosphere.
Vasily, would you like to dance?
Vasily swallowed a mouthful of bread and stood up eagerly, almost knocking his plate off the table.
I'd love to.
Navarra went over to the musician.
Excuse me, she said kindly. We would like to dance. Could you play something a little more happy?
The bard looked up from his instrument. His face seemed to pucker at the word happy.
I'm sorry, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Navarra.
She held out her hand and shook his. Elvir Martikov, he said in a gravelly voice. Then he began playing a different tune. To Navarra's surprise, the music's buoyant rhythm was worthy of dancing. Oh, look, Navarra, your friends have come to join us. Vasily nodded toward the stairs. Henry and Irina were coming down from the balcony. Navarra called out to them to come dance. Hearing the upbeat tempo of the song, everyone in the room pushed tables and chairs to the side, making space on the floor. Shall we, Sophie? Henry held out his hand. Irina took it with a warm smile, and they walked onto the dance floor. They all spun and clapped in a whirl of tapping feet and linking arms, exchanging partners until everyone in the room had danced with each other. Navarra was proud of herself that she was able to pick up the Barovian dance so quickly. Henry, on the other hand, was all left feet. Irina was a natural, graceful and exuberant, but Vasily outshone them all.
"Now I know what you're good at," Navarra said to him when the third song was done.
Vasily gave a modest smile. "Thank you, Navarra. You're not bad yourself."
"I'm better with Fyodor dancing," she said. "Sophie was pretty good, though," she added, loud enough for Irina to hear.
"Yes, she was," Vasily said. "I think I'll have a drink," said Henry. "Sophie, would you like some wine?" He grinned and winked.
"Okay, laugh it up, Gibson. That was the only time I've ever been drunk."
Irina smirked at him.
"But I think I will have some."
Navarra gasped. She held out a hand and spoke in an ominous voice.
"Just as it was foretold!"
Henry and Irina jumped, then exchanged baffled expressions. "Just as what was foretold?" Vasily asked her when they went back to their own table.
"Don't worry about it,"
Navarra said, waving her hand dismissively. She didn't feel like explaining about Gostomir's silly sayings. It was simply her duty to say them.
"You know,"
she said, when the others were out of earshot,
"Sophie hasn't told me outright, but I think she has a crush on Henry."
"Really?"
"I think maybe Rowan likes him too, though she denies it. It's shaping up to be quite a love triangle. I don't plan on being caught dead in one of those messes."
Vasily laughed.
"You say the oddest things, Navarra."
Elvir began playing a slow song, not mournful, but easy and light. Navarra took Vasily by the hand.
"Would you like to dance outside? I'm sure we'll still hear the music."
"After you, milady." Vasily bowed. The air was cool, and for once the sky was clear. Navarra breathed in deeply and looked up at the starlit night.
"Nothing like dancing under the stars," she said, letting him wrap his arms around her. "I only wish I knew their names better."
"The stars?"
"Mm-hmm."
They swayed to the music, and Vasily never took his eyes off her. "You're lovely, Navarra." She smiled, then remembered her hidden ears.
"I've been told that Sophie and I look similar."
"I can see that."
"She's a human, though."
"You're not?" Navarra let the spell fade, revealing her pointed ears.
"I'm an elf. Does that bother you?"
He brushed a lock of hair behind her delicate ear and grinned. "Not at all. You're more beautiful than ever." Navarra embedded her fingers in his hair, pulling his head down and kissing him with a passion that would have made the saints in heaven blush. Rowan gagged. She actually had a hairball. It wasn't the first time. She was on her way to talk to Navarra when she had happened upon an intimate moment between the warlock and the writer. Now she was having a coughing fit. She ran into the barn, hoping the two lovers hadn't noticed, and hacked, but the hairball didn't come. She licked her feline lips in frustration, then sat down in an empty stall. She nestled in the straw and hoped distancing herself from her friends might help stave off the recurrent nightmares about harming them. Rowan lay awake for a long while, fearing what terrors awaited her in her sleep, when someone else walked into the barn. She peered out of the stall, pressing her body into the straw to avoid being seen. It was the musician from the tavern. He walked to the center of the barn, slung his lute behind his back, and transformed into a raven.